Hi, and welcome to another episode of Scary But Not That Scary, where we're going to talk about movies that are kind of scary, but they're not that scary. This evening's episode is going to be about something that's not really that scary, and it is the most entertaining trilogy ever created, ever. I don't care what anybody else says. You can leave a comment. It's Lord of the Rings.
It is Lord of the Rings.
It's Lord of the Rings.
It's Lord of the Rings.
I mean, if you can say that there's a better trilogy, which I know you will, but it's not. It's Lord of the Rings.
So welcome to episode 3, where we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings. So, Joe.
What's the first one called?
The first Lord of the Rings? Frodo and the Magical Hat. I think that's what it was. Right? He puts that hat on. It tells him what school he goes to.
Jesus, that would...
Him and Hermione take that ring to Ron Weasley.
I would watch that. Crikey! Here come the dragons. I get my hat on.
I don't want to talk about it as like, how is it compared to the books or whatever else? I want to talk about it compared to other movies. Because I think regardless of the source material, regardless of, whatever else, I think you can look at Harry Potter, you can look at Star Wars, you can look at whatever else, and there's just nothing that reaches the same heights consistently that Lord of the Rings does.
I will say this only knowing that, knowing how it was made, is that it feels like they actually tried to make the movie completely in camera, tried to create a movie based off of the actual story. They tried to make it on a budget and were very clever about all of the things that they could do realistically. It just seems like they actually cared and tried to make the movies really good. Instead of just being like, we're just going to do the rest of this in post and then it'll be a magic.
I think there's a lot of that. I think probably the biggest reason why they turned out as good as they did is just because Peter Jackson loved the book so much. And I know if you go back and look at what he had directed before Lord of the Rings, there were a lot of people that were surprised he was the one that was picked to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Because he didn't seem like a guy that could carry the weight of this level of
production. You mean after Meet the Feebles?
Yeah, surprisingly enough.
And
Dead
Bad
Alive.
Taste
and they didn't look at Dead Alive and go, get this man Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they're like, wait, this guy can make humans chopped up with lawnmowers.
But
I feel like he could probably adaptate the... is that a word?
Adaptate? It is now.
Yes.
I think he loved the book so much and loved the source material that he felt like... I think he felt like there was only one chance that Hollywood was going to get to do it, and that he was in charge of it. And he was looking at the tools that they had, working, seeing what was happening at Weta and what they were capable of. I think he was just like, we've got one shot to do this, and there's all the reason why this can be a success if we take the time to do it right. To me, Lord of the Rings falls in one of those things like Jurassic Park and Jaws and a couple of other things at that level where I remember it being amazing. This is the greatest thing ever filmed, whatever else. And every time I watch it, I am still surprised by how good it is. Because I don't ever watch Lord of the Rings anymore unless I'm watching it one time a year as a marathon. And then we try to do it all in one day so that it's just Shire all the way to Mordor and back.
Do you make specialty dishes whenever you watch?
Well, yeah.
What do you make?
I mean, all kinds of things.
I've been here for it. It's amazing. They make crispy onion rings. They're golden. Great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love it.
But yeah,
His dad makes a specialty plaque.
We make it an event.
It's
there
really
is a plaque
fun.
we've been adding to every year that we do it.
Yeah, it's like...
But
great.
But yeah, I'm always surprised because I feel like there is. I don't know that there's a single thing I would change about any of the 3 movies, even the extended editions, because it just flows so well, and it just the acting top to bottom is phenomenal. The story, I feel like, if you've read the books, you can argue about, is this true to this? Is this true to the whatever? I think as a filmed thing, the spirit of the characters comes through.
They're all very consistent too, which is great.
Yeah. There's all those behind the scenes things, which is just amazing. Like, if you're interested in how movies are made at all, there are just so many hours of behind the scenes, like featurettes, and like just literally they almost follow around every single person that worked on the movie at some point. Like, this is the art department, and this is the guy that, came in and vacuumed at the end of the day when they were done.
There's Tommy running the vacuum again. A lot of dust on the set.
But the thing that I always remember is them talking to the guy that made the chainmail. And I forget how many sets of chainmail that they made, but they were like...
So they put out casting, they put out calls to everybody. That guy was already a blacksmith in New Zealand that already made chainmail exactly the same way that they did back in that time period.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You're hired, bud." And he's like, "Oh, of course I am, because why wouldn't I make it? Why wouldn't all of these things be accurate to the time period of a fantasy book from the 1800s?"
And they were...
that sounds like a good time period.
They were so particular about it that it was like, well, why do you want to make all this? And they were like, well, the CG is going to look fake because the texture isn't going to get the right lighting.
Yes.
And if we do anything that isn't real chainmail, it's just not going to look real. So we're having this guy make, what was it, like 7,000 sets of chainmail or something?
I don't know if it was that many, but he did make a lot.
Okay, what? Am I off by an order of magnitude? If it was 700, that's still insane.
I think it was 6.
Making 2 for the movie would be crazy.
He made more than 2. He definitely did.
A lot of chainmail.
He did.
Lord of the Rings is one of those things where I think of it whenever I'm more critical of other things. So like in Endgame, whenever they have a fight scene, but it feels like it was filmed on a soundstage, you've got no sense of geography because everything is just like, oh, it's those 4 people versus these 4 people. And then you see them on a relatively flat surface run into one another, or they're on multiple floating things and it's like very CG around it. But like it feels very staged or very flat. And then, you've got all the backstory of those characters or whatever, but to a large part, it feels like watching a kid slam action figures together. Whereas in Lord of the Rings,
that's very true.
The acting and the writing and everything is so good that you're watching this battle about, tens of thousands of people, but you're not thinking like, oh, look at the battle and look at this. You're paying attention to the 10 people you've been following for 12 hours.
And you feel like you're a part of it.
Right.
Like you feel like you're in it.
Right.
You feel the intenseness and you feel like concerned. You're you're upset because you're like, how are they going to get out of this?
Well,
this is too much. There's no way they're going to get out of this, even though I know this is the first movie still.
Joe,
do
you remember seeing Fellowship of the Ring in the theater?
Yeah, it was. I can't believe how stoked I was for it. What's the phrase from The Simpsons? The monster truck thing where you buy the whole.
You'll pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
That's the way I felt. Like by the end of it, I'm like.
That episode of The Simpsons has the best hype line I've ever heard in anything, and it's that Truckosaurus ad, which is, if you're not there, you better be dead or in jail. If you're in jail, break out. And that's how I felt about Lord of the Rings.
20 tons and 4 stories of car-crunching, fire-breathing, prehistoric insanity.
Whoa! One night only.
One night only.
One night only at the Springfield Speedway this Saturday. If you miss this, you'd better be dead or in jail.
And if you're in jail, break out.
Be there, be there, be there.
I remember seeing it. I didn't see the first one in the theater on opening night. That was not a midnight show.
Oh,
I saw it the first weekend. I had heard from people that it was, really good, better than the trailer, whatever else. You won't just go see it. It's amazing. I remember I saw it with my parents because I remember my dad standing up at the end of Fellowship of the Ring and going, no.
Oh.
He goes, they didn't destroy the ring? And I said, well, it's a trilogy. He goes, there's 2 more of these? He goes, I mean, it was amazing, but I thought they were just going to walk up there and throw it in. Nope. You got another 10 hours before that happens, sir.
Take a lighter and just put that shit out.
But yeah, I mean, and it's the first time I saw it, I just remember being very impressed with how good Fellowship was, but also wanting it to do more. And I remember thinking, this stretched for time? It feels pretty good, but what else is going to happen? Are they just going to walk up there and...
So the battle for Helm's Deep was the second one, right?
It's in the second one. What's
the first one then?
The first one, they start off in the Shire.
Yes. Well,
they get chased by ring wraiths and end up in the village of Bree.
Uh-huh.
And then that's where they meet Aragorn.
Yes.
So he meets up with them, takes them to Rivendell. They get the other members of the Fellowship, and then they take off. They go through Moria. They do the other things there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends with the orcs catching up with them on the banks of that river.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And then those things happen.
And then
that's
Dumbledore comes and he helps them get across.
Yeah, Hagrid shows up with that Griffith. Or Griffin.
Yeah,
not Merv Griffith. Shows up and produces an episode of Wheel of Fortune on the spot. And you're like, this doesn't seem to fit with this movie. What happened to those hobbits?
You're late.
What is your favorite scene in that first movie? For any reason.
Oh, I already absolutely know. And it's the scene when they get into where Gimli goes in, and then they go and then it's like a graveyard, and then they're like Merry or Pippin, I can't remember, knocks the thing down, and it's just falling, and it's just making all these sounds, and then
Pippin.
And he's like, you
fool
fool
of a toque.
Yeah. That scene when they're battling those orcs, so like Peter Jackson, so much like the battle, the shots, the beheadings, and just and then when that giant orc comes in, you're just like, what? I thought this was just going to be like a cool little fight scene.
Yeah.
And then the giant one comes in, you're like, are you shitting me?
Right. Well, and then that's the part too. Like that's the part where you start to get really excited and really nerd out the first time you've seen these movies, especially in the theater. When Two Towers and Return of the King didn't exist yet, you couldn't watch a podcast like this of people telling you how awesome they were.
Spoiler alert.
But to be in that theater the first time and having seen, relatively nothing other than the trailers, and then for them to get into that room, he knocks the bucket off, and then you hear the drums, the war drums, right? And you know something is coming. And you've already had you've had a couple of horseback chases that were filmed very, very cool. And then you had your ring wraith fight at the top of Weathertop. So those things, including the part where the troll kills Frodo for the second time in the movie. And you're like, okay, how much more intense can this get in these moments? Then after that happens, they go out into the hall, and that's when all the orcs surround them. And then the Balrog shows up and chases the orcs off. And then you have that whole sequence. I think I know it's probably the cliche one to pick, but You Shall Not Pass.
I mean,
is the standout moment in that movie to me.
It's literally it's forever in history, like one of the best
It's
quotable scenes of anything.
I think the thing about it to me is that it so encapsulates what's amazing about the movies, which is that I don't think there's any rough edges at all on that Balrog effect right then.
When that fucking thing comes out and then it goes like flexes and it's just like
when it
like,
flexes and just the flames come out of everywhere and it's just standing there, and then he just gives it that look and he looks,
and then your butthole just kind of clenches.
He doesn't
just like
he doesn't even look,
don't let the poop come out.
He doesn't look sweaty like they've been in a battle. He looks like he's been too close to a blast furnace.
Yeah.
Like, it looks like he is getting the heat radiating off of the Balrog more than just, oh, we've been doing this fight. But yeah, when he yells at it and it flexes and then he just stands his ground and that whole thing, then that goes to the sequence where they're running down the steps.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of those things, you're just like,
and then they're like,
it's hard to explain how much at the time you didn't get those types of things in movies. You got maybe 3 minutes of that, and that was their whole budget. The part when Boromir dies,
it's very sad.
This is another one of those things with Peter Jackson's directing.
I actually forgot that was in the first one.
Where he gets shot with that first arrow, and it is filmed to be surprising. Mm-hmm. You don't think it's going to happen. And then the second one, he's like battling through, and you think maybe he's going to pull through. You don't know. You see the second one hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one where, like, now you know he's probably not going to make it. He rages a little bit more. And then the third one, you don't even see it. You hear it hit and you see him react, but the music is swelling. Merry and Pippin are there. They see what's happening. They charge up to those orcs, immediately just get grabbed because they don't know how to fight yet.
Yeah.
And then he just falls to his knees, and the orcs know he's dead, so they just run past him and leave him for dead.
Is that when the one giant orc comes right up to him, and it's that shot where he's standing, and it's like that pan back shot, and he's just like standing there with the arrow, and you're like,
yep, because that's the moment right before Aragorn knocks that away from him.
Yeah.
And then fights that dude it's super poignant with Boromir. And then all of a sudden, Aragorn is there saving the day, and you're watching that fight. And then it immediately gear shifts to, there's an amazing shot where Aragorn kills that orc captain, and he is looking around, and it's in, it's not slow moment, it's probably like 3/4 speed or whatever. And the look on his eyeballs, I don't know how you act that emotion, but he looks possessed and frightened, and like he is just scanning the area to make sure he's not about to be attacked by someone else.
Yeah.
And he looks like that for like 1/4 of a second, and then he notices Boromir, and his face completely changes, and he runs over there, and every time I see that scene, I think, how do you act that well? Like, how do you just even know that those are the right emotions if you were living that moment?
Good.
And they're just all over the place.
Yeah.
Two Towers, I saw at a midnight show. Did not get out of that until 3 a.m. or whatever.
I'm pretty sure we also saw it at midnight showing.
And the thing that I thought when it was over at 2:30 in the morning was not I'm tired or not wow that was long.
I'm like, I'm gonna go back and watch it for Fellowship of the Rings.
What I thought was, if they started it again right now, I would watch that movie again right now. There's a bunch of cool scenes in there. It starts off with that Balrog fight, which is
that's right. We hit the recap.
Favorite scenes in Two Towers?
I'd probably say the Battle of Helm's Deep is my favorite, just because it just looks horrible to be there.
Yeah.
And then there's just billions of orcs. They're trying to get in. Nothing can stop them. It's kind of like the whole terrible World War Z movie where they like start piling up and then they just run up each other and and you're just like, and everybody, is like, I don't know how we're going to stop them. And it sucks. But then they prevail.
It's weird knowing what happens in Return of the King and watching it. Because the first time through, I was impressed by, again, like the geography of the fight. that there's like stuff happening like on the other side of the wall. There's stuff happening, after the hole gets blown in it, there's stuff happening behind the wall, on top of the wall, over at the gate. So like you really have that sense of geography. But I think
oddly enough, whenever I watch Army of Darkness and that whole scene at the end with the battle thing, it's very discombobulating. Just doesn't seem like it's on the same level as Two Towers. It's weird.
it doesn't. Let's get the hell out of here. There's my favorite thing in Army of Darkness, and we can cut this or not.
No way.
Is when that flaming thing comes over and explodes, and that skeleton that they've obviously made out of just like plaster of Paris explodes into dust. No, I'm thinking of not the one that catches on fire, the other one where his like whole body just turns to dust. But right when it happens during the explosion, there's an 80-yard line where you just hear a guy go, "Oof!"
I forgot about that.
Like
it's really good.
The most ridiculous thing.
That would have been great if they would have injected that into Two Towers.
My favorite shot of maybe all of the Lord of the Rings, maybe all of cinematic history.
Oh, come on. I'm very excited to hear this.
It's the shot at the end of Two Towers whenever Smeagol and Gollum are talking to each other about getting what's-her-face, Shelob, to kill them.
The things back and forth.
And then he runs and he's like, come on, hobbits. And then he's like happily leading them to the thing. And then the music goes to the choir. And then it pans up over the forest. And after all that stuff we've been through in that movie, and you're like, they've already been through so much. And then it pans up. You see all of Mordor, which just looks like a bunch of camps and like fires burning and whatever else. You see the tower. You see Mount Doom back there. Mm-hmm. And then there's all the ring wraiths flying around. And the music hits this note that is like, oh, by the way, in this next movie, they're absolutely fucked.
Yeah.
And that scene is such a down note at the end of that. But at the same time, you can't help but feel like, let's fucking go. Now, it's another year later. It is now 2003. That year was weird waiting for Return of the King because Fellowship was so good. Two Towers added so much to it. And just that feeling of, are they going to stick the landing? Imagine any other movie where you like it through acts 1 and 2, and you're like, oh, I hope this ends well. Imagine pausing it and walking away for a year before you come back to see if the end is any good.
Right. That's what, like, there's a lot of parts of part 3 that I'm not a huge fan of.
Blasphemy, get out.
Oh.
I mean, what are those, Joe?
I'm not going to lie. I just, it's so over the top with the elephants.
That still only counts as one.
There's so many shots I could talk about in the movie that I love. Starting from the end, that part when the Eye of Sauron pops and it blows the tower is crumbling,
right? And then
it all sucks in out. And it pops and it blows it out in that
very
spherical
cool.
pressure wave.
Mm-hmm. That part is one of my favorites.
Shot's awesome. Right before that, Mount Doom explodes, which looks amazing.
Yeah,
I love the way that Mount Doom is a character in that film. It is just a volcano, but there are so many shots where they're talking about something that has to do with Sauron or Mordor, and it is looming in the background of the shot.
Yeah. Do you know they originally were going to call that Mountain Doom? But they couldn't get the rights for the...
Yeah. Let's do this. What, sane or not, what one change would you make to any of these movies? Because I just thought of one. Throw in Liquid Metal Ring Wraith.
Yeah, if there was a T-1000 and the Mordor, I would be fine with it.
All right, Joe.
We should probably wrap this up.
We've talked a lot about these movies.
Probably too much.
Would you say these are just movies to you, or are they more important than that?
I would say that they are a part of cinematic history.
They are the best movies I've ever seen, but they're also something more than that now. Like, if somebody asks me what my favorite movie is, I will frequently not say Lord of the Rings, because it feels
very
like,
true.
because it's just not even like a question. It's, well, obviously Lord of the Rings is a thing, and I don't even know if that's a movie at this point anymore.
I mean, my still go-to.
And I'm like, maybe Terminator 2?
I literally was going to say Terminator 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I do want to talk about this for a moment.
Okay.
It was filmed in New Zealand.
Never heard of it.
And New Zealand, on film, it looks amazing. So, Joe, would you like to tell people about your visit to Hobbiton?
So last year, Rebecca and I went to New Zealand specifically to see Hobbiton.
Uh-huh.
And come to find out, it is exactly what you think it is. It is literally like stepping into the film. They recreated the entire set on this farmer's land to do the Hobbit films. Like they like after they did Lord of the Rings, they tore everything out. They tore everything down.
Yep.
And then when they came back to do the Hobbit movie, they had to recreate every single Hobbit hole and every single thing. There was literally, they had to take and build a 50-foot tree out of whatever the hell they make a tree out of.
The tree over Bag End?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's still there. It's fake. But it is the most incredible thing you'll ever see. It is.
I know I ask you this every time, but I legitimately forget the answer every time. Did you cross the literal stone bridge?
I literally crossed Stone Bridge.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a little horse.
Were you in a cart? And
I was in the cart. Rebecca was in the.
You set off some fireworks.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of kids chasing us. I was like,
you look back and you were like, I knew this was authentic, but those are the same children. And how do they keep them that young?
Smoking a little pipe. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like,
so you would recommend doing this?
Like, so not only did they just film, obviously, did they film Hobbiton in that area of Hobbiton, but like,
right.
So we drove from Auckland all the way down to Wellington, and then we took a ferry across and went down past Wellington and over to the South Island. And like, well, first of all, driving on the wrong side of the road in the wrong side of the car is very bizarre. As you're driving, everything just looks like a movie anyway. But every part of it is literally parts of the landscapes that are from all the scenes from Lord of the Rings. It's insane. Like we drove through basically exactly where they filmed Mordor, which is only one tiny part, which is like this weird desertous looking land. And you're like, So he chose very wisely on all of his locations, and there's only 3.5 million people that live there, so which is like the population of LA or something, or San Diego. There's literally more people. There's less people than sheep there. There's So when he did casting calls, he literally just put up flyers all over New Zealand to get people.
Right.
And then so like what we're talking about with like the fight scenes and stuff, there's actually women dressed up as men to ride horses and do a lot of the acting, because there's just literally wasn't enough people. So they just, whoever was there that would show up, and they just, So if you ever get a chance to go to New Zealand, it's the worst flight you'll ever have in your entire life, but it is the best experience you'll ever have. Yeah.
It's weird to me to think that there are so many people that have just seen this as, it's 3 movies you can, stream.
There's a
and just
lot.
that, without the hype there, whatever else, it makes me wonder what that experience is like when you've seen things like this, or you've heard people talk about it, or whatever, and you're like, I guess people say it's all right, and then you watch it. Do you watch it now and you're like, some of these effects look dated, or I've seen Game of Thrones, so whatever. Like, I want to know what the reaction is if you come into it like cold now. Like, is your response, my God, these are the greatest things ever filmed? Or is it just like, well, yeah, I heard they were good?
That would be an interesting experiment to find Zoomers nowadays that have never seen it, just to see what their reactions are. Anyway, so moral of the story is that it's scary, but not that scary.
There's a reason why these movies why people say these are the greatest things ever created.
I'd buy that for $1.
Besides RoboCop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
RoboCop 3 is not a real movie. It's terrible.
Actually, maybe this whole thing was a mistake because I forgot about the Jurassic World trilogy.
Oh my God, do not. Fucking hell. Just don't. So anyway, and what are we going to do the next time, I wonder?
I don't know.
Well, I guess you should probably stay tuned for next season, which is just like probably
next season.
Probably just next month.
What are we going to talk about next month? Holiday movies? Holiday horror movies?
Yes.
Only The Substance?
No.
Terrifier 3? Oddity again?
I think we talk about some obscure and not so obscure Xmas movies on next episode of Scary But Not That Scary. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, holy jeez.
Yeah.
I appreciate you watching.
Hot takes on Lord of the Rings. Cutting edge.
Hot takes.
Content.
Cool eats. All right. Goodbye. We love you.
I love how we just keep trailing off because Byron's not over there giving us a thumbs up.
I mean, he'll just cut it whenever, but